Welcome everyone, Costin here with the discussion about Total War Warhammer 3. Immortal Empires patch 2.2 has come out, and with it a whole number of changes. Significant changes in some cases, less significant in other places where they might have been needed. One of the more significant changes that they've made is with regards to minor settlement battles, in that you will encounter them far less frequently than before. Based on what I'm reading in the patch notes, what's going to happen is that there's an effect on the campaign map that gives you a chance to trigger a minor settlement battle, and it's tied to the garrison building. Obviously the patch has just come out, very few people have gotten the chance to play it, so we'll see how this actually plays out. But if it's tied to the garrison building, exclusively to that, then that means they're going to be significantly less frequent. I do want to note that nothing they've shown here fixes the issues of pathfinding, of towers, barricades, all that in these minor settlement battles that do exist. Instead, Creative Assembly's solution, so to speak, was to remove them. Oh well. So here are the highlights of the patch according to Creative Assembly. Changes to settlements and garrisons to reduce the frequency of settlement battles. Additional flavor for some of the special settlement garrison, including Caracade Peaks. Black Pyramids gave them Blight more by allowing them to use additional units. Character experience rebalance, reducing the importance of victory types and focusing on enemy unit destruction, because it has been the case that the type of victory that you won would significantly impact the amount of experience you're going to gain. Tweaks to victory objectives, several legendary lords, including those of the Lizardmen, High Elves, and Empire. A game mode split option has been added to ranked multiplayer, letting you join separate queues and give you greater control of your online experience. Adjustments to AI aggression, strategy, and overall game difficulty, and monsters are invading the old world. The form of regiments renowned free, and a new endgame crisis brings ruin death to all. Yes. So the Skaven endgame crisis has been added to the game, as well as a whole number of things over here. And you do have a huge and expansive list of things over here to go through. Now, I'm not going to go over the regiments of renown or the Skaven endgame crisis, the Vermintide, really, because quite frankly, there's not really a huge amount to say. But there are some important things in the gameplay department. So how they play events on campaign starts have been written to cover core gameplay elements for every faction, remove the number of starting wars between factions who were not their intended starting opponents, updated reinforcement locations to prevent unintended enemy behavior. Effects that increase healing caps are no longer 100 times stronger than intended. So Helman Gorst maybe won't be the overpowered machine that he has been so far. Settlement and deploy towers have had their damage reduced to be consistent with Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2 towers. I'm curious to know whether or not this is going to count wall towers or not. We'll see. Fix some quest items that provide the magical attacks by a legendary lord having magical attacks by default. Fix an issue where Sword of the Cane didn't correctly transfer. That could be certainly an issue. Fix an issue. Okay. A bunch of factors here. Remove the cap for income provided by tribute from vassals. This was especially important for Nikai, but also important for the Warriors of Chaos. Endgame ultimate victory objectives and support vassalizing factions as an alternative option to confederating or destroying them. Useful for Warriors of Chaos in particular. Endgame scenarios now trigger the research of all technologies for the respective factions automatically. Oh crap, so they're going to be even worse. The free upkeep effect, okay, and as well as some fixes and improvements over there. Crucially, that if you're allied with the Tomb Kings or Beastmen, you now get 1 unit capacity for all that faction's units, so you can get Tomb King units from an ally. That's actually very substantial, like really makes having a Tomb King ally extremely goddamn useful, because they're not going to cost upkeep. Same with the Beastmen if you can ally, as well as various changes to individual races. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm going to focus on the ones that I feel matter and ignore the ones that are not so significant. And by the way, I don't really care too much about multiplayer, so I'm going to ignore that. I'm not familiar with the balance where it's at, so I'm going to skip over that. But yeah, there are a bunch of multiplayer changes with this as well. The first faction to talk about is the Daemon Prince. He can now use their basic port and special port locations, and very importantly for the campaign purpose perspective, the Daemon Prince deity-specific post-battle captive options now offer an additional effect in addition to glory gain. So Khorne gives you unit experience, Nurgle replenishment, Slaanesh favor, and Siege winds of magic. Well, I imagine that early on you're very much going to go for Slaanesh early on because you absolutely need that favor as opposed to unit experience or replenishment. But later on you can certainly specialize in any particular god if you can get the campaign rolling. The problem is the Daemon Prince, you know, and that's pretty much it outside of, you know, some multiplayer cost changes. The problem with the Daemon Prince is that he isn't as strong as other lords because he can't use items. And yes, the body parts do give him a lot, don't get me wrong, but survival-wise, like Armor of Destiny compared to the body parts, like how about the body parts and the Armor of Destiny? That would be great. In fact, people have found out that playing the Daemon Prince, that using the Daemon Prince confederated as another faction is with proper items is more powerful. I mean, poor Daniel, poor Yuri, he's like genuinely the worst faction in the entire game, the worst legendary lord in the entire game, and it's like this is too weak and insignificant. It doesn't fix any of the issues that he does have. But yeah, I guess one of the things that actually annoys me, I understand a lot of people play multiplayer, but it is annoying to look at the very large number of changes that's like, oh, we're gonna adjusting this and that in multiplayer, and it's like, can you adjust factions that just don't currently work in the campaign very well? Because Daniel is awful right now, and it's like, oh, you get post-battle options. Okay, he needs a lot more than that to be workable right now. He really does need a heck of a lot more. So some changes, it is improved, but it's insignificant compared to the many issues he does have. Moving on to the Dwarves, and as people know, the Dwarves have been in a fairly miserable state since the launch of Immortal Empires, specifically because of the grudges, and well, now they've actually improved on that in a fairly substantial way. So, first off, rebalance the starting severity of some starting grudges for Dwarf Legendary Lords, fixed the issue where grudge severity was increasing far more quickly than intended. Basically, within 10 turns and in 20 turns, as any legendary lord, you would get your grudge meter filled out, regardless of what you did, how well you played. Poor Thoric Ironbrow. Well, I did a couple of turns, more than 10 turns of his campaign. It didn't double in 10 turns. I don't know when it's going to double, maybe increases in, let's say, 20 turns or something like that, but it's certainly increasing far slower than it was before. Now, don't get me wrong on this. That is an improvement, a major quality of life change, but the Dwarves have other issues. They've got issues with their unit roster, they've got issues with their campaign mechanics, they've got a ton of problems right now. They've got issues with replenishment. They've got no way of improving their replenishment because they have no hero that can provide them that. Yes, there are mods, but the base game does matter how that's handled. Anyway, so they fixed the grudge issue in a significant way, but it's not enough to really improve on that. Dwarves no longer declare war on other dwarves during grudge to far in-game scenario. Fixed an issue where Gotra could not equip dwarf runes. Added an army-wide 20% missile block chance to Belegar's lore trait. Moved Belegar's vanguard deployment from his lord effects to his faction benefits. Pretty nice. And that's pretty much it, except Forgrim starting engineer now has his unique starting trait, as does Cazador. Some changes. The grudge one is significant, but outside of that doesn't go far enough to fix the many issues that dwarves do have in their campaigns. Like, they really desperately need an improved growth for their faction to be able to compete with other factions. Like, even if you don't have the grudge issue, like I've played the entire campaign as Thoric, I can tell you this, even without starting grudges, because I played without them, you still have too many issues with growth your economy, with maintaining large armies. Like, dwarves desperately need buffs when it comes to that. Otherwise, they just fall behind compared to the vast majority of other factions in the game right now. Okay, moving on to Kislev, another race that has suffered tremendously from the launch of Immortal Empires. I mean, they were already in a rough starting position, but things have changed. Oh my, have things changed. So, Katrin, poor Katrin, one of the war's legendary lords alongside Yuri. She's gotten the mammoths replaced with marauder hunters in both of Katrin's starting enemy armies. So no longer some wrecking balls of units that you have to deal with from the very start. She got its sleds and little Grom to Erengrad's Frost Home special buildings, reduced part cost of Erengrad by a fairly substantial amount. So it's actually useful to upgrade the port if you're playing as Costin. Fixed campaign settlement visuals to properly display as Kislev. Okay, that was a bit of an issue. On top of that, some buffs to Katrin. She now starts with ice sculpting technology, granting faster access to ice core training mechanics, so she'll be able to get the mage going from the very start, if I'm not mistaken. Change Kislev technology to require ownership of settlements to also allow for allied vassal ownership of settlements, so you no longer need to control certain settlements directly to be able to get the technology. This is very important for every legendary lord of Kislev, because before, a substantial portion of your tech tree was locked behind settlement ownership, but now you can make an alliance. So let's say if you're playing Costin, you can ally Katrin, get her technologies. If you're playing Boris Ursus, you can ally both of them. Okay, that's very good, a very solid buff, but it's not enough. I'm sorry. Yes, removing the mammoths and replacing them with hunters, reducing the cost there, it doesn't fix the substantial problems that both Katrin and Costin have currently in their campaigns. It just simply does not. There are some steps in the right direction, but it just is not enough to make Kislev a viable faction at the moment in the campaign. They're still going to be pretty weak, though less weak than before, and maybe Katrin's campaign is going to be less miserable, especially with some of the changes that have been made to Skaven. I'll get to those in just a moment. Moving on to Skaven, well, I actually do want to mention something that's very important for the ogres. Just one thing to mention. They get a technology that gives them 1 camp limit for every level 5 camp constructed. So ogres have been unleashed on the campaign map. But moving on to Skaven, because this is actually more substantial. Ogres still will have a lot of issues, don't get me wrong, in their campaign. They need more than that, but at least they're no longer limited by their camps in the campaign. But anyway, the massive Skaven Doom Whales need a bump, especially since similar chariots are significantly overweighting. Okay. Warlocks, Engineers, Heroes that once again experience 10-turn cooldown. Add missing settlement icons for resources and strategic locations for Crookback Mountain. Improve Skaven eye construction to reduce the number of Skaven slaves armies, especially for Clan Ishin. Now, this is significant because every single Skaven faction, every single one, major, minor, it doesn't matter, would just be swarming with armies and armies and armies of Skaven slaves in particular. In the early game, making them an absolute nightmare to deal with, regardless of who you were playing against. So you'd have one of the most powerful factions in the game, you have a weak faction, you'd just be swarmed by rats. Now, it is my hope that with this, you're no longer going to see a situation where Clan Ishin, like this actually happened in my Miao Yin campaign recently, where Clan Ishin is reduced to 2 settlements and it's like they've got 3 full fucking stacks of Skaven slaves coming for me. That is a bit ridiculous. Now, moving on, we're continuing to iterate on the faction and lord effects of older lords. The goal is to ensure every character has their own thematic playstyle and incorporates any new mechanics and systems added since their original introduction. Okay, so quick. Clan wars are known for a most unskaven-like loyalty, so we're representing this by giving quick access to cheaper, more frequent uses of Menace Below, as well as cheaper clan rats and storm vermin. So the following changes have been made to faction effects. Quick no longer steals a percentage of XP from other lords. He loses minus 2 loyalty for Graciers. Food cost reduced by 33% for Menace Below uses. Players can now purchase up to additional 5 uses of Menace Below before battle. Reduced upkeep for Clan Rats and Storm Vermin by 25% faction-wide. That is a fairly substantial buff to Queek, especially in his early game where he's very much reliant on those kind of units to get by. Well, Clan Rats specifically. We've also added a reward for capturing Carrick 8 Peaks and tweaked Queek's Lord effects to be more versatile. So the Skaven, who are a strong race, got 2 of their legendary lords reworked, but not the Dwarfs. Yeah, kind of pissed off. Like, we've seen this before from Creative Assembly. We know they're Skaven fanboys, but it's like, it's painful to see this again and again. Like, the Skaven did not need, like, Queek and Treach. Okay, Treach needed this, but it's like, there's races that need this more. I'm not trying to complain, I'm just pointing a fact. The Skaven did not need this kind of effort. But anyway, Queek's Lord effect changes. 50% upkeep for Clan Rats and Storm Vermin has been removed, but you get the faction-wide benefit. That's actually significantly more useful. And it's minus 20 leadership for enemy lords and heroes in the local region. Ooh. Weapon strength and melee attack buffs when fighting dwarves in greenskins now apply map-wide. Melee attack buff when fighting dwarves in greenskins change plus 10%. Carrick 8 Peaks changes. Controlling Carrick 8 Peaks as Queek now grants Frenzy for all Clan Rats and Storm Vermin. So much for Treach's great Storm Vermin, isn't it? Don't worry, he's gotten buffed as well. So, his original bonuses for breaking treaties were not really worth the major reliability cost. Can you imagine that? We've reworked them to instead provide major bonuses on any war declaration, rewarding the player for setting up cunning schemes and eliminating their opponent's rapid, unexpected attacks. Yeah, we'll see about that. To represent Clan Rictus's renowned wealth, Clan Rats and Storm Vermin who managed to survive a few battles, gain some experience, will win the gift of improved armor and weaponry. Treach's army will now benefit from devastating flanker attribute, making his armies particularly vicious in ambushes. You do love the Skaven, don't you, Creative Assembly? Even taking one of the most worthless characters in the game and making them somewhat useful. So, the Betrayal bonus has been reworked. Treach's factions now gain the following bonus to all armies for 3 turns whenever he declares war. Holy crap. 25% ambush success chance, plus 50% enemy reinforcement time, Vanguard deployment, plus one use for Menace Below. Other faction effects changes include plus 3 recruit rank for Storm Vermin has been removed. Instead, he gets a plus 1 armor and base weapon at damage attack per unit experience rank for Clan Rats and Storm Vermin. He no longer has Vanguard deployment to all units, but he does get Devastating Flanker. Fraud's Professional Obliteratory will now correctly apply their effects. However, for this to take effect, players must start a new campaign, and the Warlock Engineer model is no longer offset on the campaign map after a quick save is loaded. Skaven settlements having their wall tower swapped for tier 3 and tier 4 projectiles has been fixed. And Treach Craventail has lost his ability of Buyer Blood passive. So yeah, they've given Treach Craventail a giant buff. He's still useless, but yeah, he's gained quite a bit there, especially when he declares war, because it means he's just going to be able to wipe out the ambush success chance benefit. It gives him a very significant benefit in a battle, and in the initial battles after he declares war. And he will get some really substantial buff to Clan Rats and Storm Vermin in the campaign. Finally, to move on to the Empire, the last faction I want to talk about here. Some updates, some padding has been added between the Empire technology groups so they appear nice and neat. Empire factions can no longer bypass the 5-turn cooldown on Confederation through their faction mechanics. Don't know why you'd want people to wait, but whatever. Elector count tweaks. Elector counts can now be invited to join wars, greatly reduce the reinforcement delay, and remove the cost for removing the reinforced point in Empire Elector reinforcement battles. Okay. Fair enough, so you can actually get the reinforcement army to help out earlier. Though I haven't had much issues with those kind of battles. Add the extra cavalry units to the Empire reinforcement battles to help with larger map sizes. Alright. Previously, the player would receive an Imperial Authority penalty when elector count capitals were raised, but not when they were occupied. This produced strange outcomes. For example, if it was considered fine if Festus occupied Hochland, but not if he raised it. Now, the penalty will apply if any non-Empire faction controls the capital. Since Sylvania is occupied on turn 1, we've increased the buffer for when penalties from lost capitals kicks in from 1 to 2 because of Sylvania. Fixed an inconsistency with electoral capitals being raised versus occupied. Electoral counts now use the region tagging system present in Champion of Chaos. Players now gift a broader set of regions to relevant electors, including ones not owned by an elector at the start that they might have a claim to. Authority is now gained by returning an elector's capital rather than reviving them from death. This removes situations where it was better to allow an elector to die rather than save them. Alright, and it does require you to start a new campaign to get that. Alright. Now, I still think that they need to do a lot more with the elector counts, and honestly, just yeah, they fix some issues, some problems, but the only thing that's significant there is like they can be invited to join wars. Outside of that, we still have the same issues. We still can't replenish an elector count territory. We still can't use the legion system with them to give them some orders. Like, you have an entire system already developed in the game, Creative Assembly. Allow us to use it. A couple of changes over here, some fixes over here. A version for Volkmar with the Tomb King's Vampire Counts and Vampire Coast. Confederate Empire Miners for the Empire Politics changes now properly obeys the 5-turn cooldown. Okay. And the player-controlled Empire can now do full diplomacy with Marienburg, including diplomatic confederation. So we can do full diplomacy with Marienburg, but not with the elector counts. And prestige gain from battles is now visible in the post-battle screen. And there's also other factors. He now gains 25% prestige from all battles. Prestige wasn't really an issue. You started with a little, sure, but it was very easy to get to a point where you just had ludicrous amounts that you weren't spending in any campaign. So it's like, oh, he gets 25% prestige. He's still useless. He now grants guarding ability to Reichsguard the Great Swords. Okay, so he no longer... so he removed a leadership gets 10 charge bonus. The effect can now replenish in neutral territory. What's annoying here is like they recognize the issue, but instead of fixing the diplomatic problems, they just decide to give Karl Franz and Karl Franz alone a benefit. You might understand the problem. Okay, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question. What about Gelt? What about your other armies? Because you're not just going to have one army. This is the problem with this kind of stuff. Like, it's like, oh, we're giving Karl Franz replenishment in neutral territory. Okay, that's good, but playing the Empire, playing across the Empire, trying to hold the territory together is something important across the campaign. It's not just a single lord. It's good that he has that benefit, but it doesn't fix all the issues. It only fixes some issues for him. Gelt's still going to have issues. Other armies under Karl Franz are still going to have issues. Still, Galmaraz now grants Sundering attacks and 75 flat armor piercing instead of 10% weapon strength, and also grants additional 15 weapon strength. Some other changes for other races, but yeah, those are the major ones. Although a nice benefit for Cetra to receive a Tomb Prince with a unique trait that start the campaign, but still not enough, I feel. For poor Cetra. He needs more changes. Okay, so the faction changes are not quite what a lot of people, including myself, would have hoped for, but there are some substantial changes made to the campaign with this patch. Changes that will affect the way you play battles, the way you play your campaign, the way the AI treats you. First off, though, is an experience change. So now experience the victory type is no longer going to determine how much experience you're going to gain. Instead, it's going to be granted based on a combination of enemy army value and the proportion of enemy army that was destroyed, regardless of whether the battle was a win or a loss. So if you destroy a lot of the enemy army, you're going to get a lot of experience. If you don't, you won't. This prevents some of the cheesing tactics that people could use before, where they would attack a minor army or an army with just one lord next to a big army, kill that lord before the reinforcements arrived, and got full-on experience from that. Alright, then heroes will now gain around 50% more experience from participating in battles, bringing their progression rate closer to that of lords. So heroes will be in a pretty good spot. Though the issue with hero skill trees and having too many points to spend right now, I think, will remain a factor. On top of that, there is a new mentor skill to every lord and hero that will unlock at level 30, can be upgraded at 40 and 50. And a portion of their experience earned among characters to share a portion of their experience among characters of the same type across the faction. So what Creative Assembly seems to want to move to do with this, and hopefully they'll move forward with this further in future patches, is they want to make it so that instead of the current situation where you can get a really powerful army on your legendary lord with powerful heroes and units, you can get in a situation where it's easier to get multiple powerful armies across your faction, which is actually going to be very significant as a buff to you as a player, especially given some of the changes that are being made to the AI. Now, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, if lords have the skill points to actually spend on this, because lords can struggle with this. Heroes don't, but lords can struggle with the amount of skills that they want to get. So spending free skill points can be a bit of an issue. Then there's settlement garrison changes, frequency of unwalled settlement battles. So they're looking for a sweet spot for unwalled settlement battle types. You know, you can look for the sweet spot all you want, Creative Assembly. If settlement battles continue to suck, it doesn't matter what you do and how often we play them. They're still gonna suck. You need to look on the core fundamental issue with barricades and towers and all that. But anyway, all major settlements, let's look at this. We lost some of the more detailed and nuanced pieces of content when we transitioned from Mortal Empires to Immortal Empires by in the process of re-adding some of the flavor. So all major settlements retain walled settlement battles. All minor settlements will now trigger a land battle by default. An effect has been added to turn the default land battle into an unwalled settlement battle. The effect has been added to most garrison chains on tier 2 and tier 3. Okay, very good. Major settlements in Norscan and Ogre homeland will still not provide walled sieges, but will change to unwalled settlement battles. Just a major one. And then, of course, Wood Elves and Beastmen, etc. And some improvements to defense tower projectiles for Kislev, Ogres, and Nurgle. And heroes have been added to garrisons. Just various garrison improvements over here. Then, moving on to probably one of the biggest changes, really. I mean, it is a major quality of life change to no longer have to fight a continuous stream of unwalled settlement battles or minor settlement battles. That's a major quality of life change because it makes battles more interesting. But it's not fixing, really, as far as I see it, the fundamental problem that exists with the minor settlement battles. Even if we are going to have far fewer of them, don't get me wrong. But here's the problem with that. The problem is, if you're the attacker in a minor settlement, you're generally going to do much better than the defender. The defender, even if it's a player, the defender just doesn't have the opportunities to... Let's say you have an army of high elves attacking another army of high elves in a settlement. The defender has a lot of issues with properly utilizing their troops because they don't have the space. Like, there's issues with the terrain, there's issues with the barricades, there's issues with towers, significant ones. So removing minor settlement battles, by and large, doesn't really fix the issues they have. It just means we encounter them less. But when we encounter them, they're still going to be pretty crap. I'm sorry to say it, but yeah, they're pretty bad at the moment. So I hope Creative Assembly does change that. But anyway, moving on to AI, the AI situation. They've received a lot of feedback to AI and game difficulty. Okay. While we've been fixing significant issues, have you really? Because I feel like this is one of the most significant changes really that they've made. We felt this was a good opportunity to increase the aggressiveness of the AI. This is double-edged sword for players that are already struggling with the game. This has potential to worsen experience. We'll need a lot more feedback on this topic if these changes are correctly balanced. Here's my perspective. I think that the AI, and a lot of it is tied to bonuses, the AI gets maybe too much early on and doesn't scale properly in the late game. So it's very difficult early. The AI is at the strongest in the early game and at its weakest in the late game. Therein lies the issue. Anyway, so what have they done? So increase generally army aggressiveness between Warhammer to a level between Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 3. Additional difficulty scaling for aggressiveness on very hard and legendary. Tweaks for AI behaviors around settlement, more likely to attack them. We'll see how that plays out. Increase in faction potential bonus for higher difficulties. And increase XP gains for AI units, AI characters. Reduce the AI generated diplomatic goals 2 to 1. AI selection skill for those factions. Adjusted how the AI deals with yin and yang. Increase priority for AI to build garrison and wall building. So, oh great, they removed a lot of minor settlement battles by default, but we're gonna get a lot of them anyway because the AI is gonna build walls. Oh, lovely. AI behavior, the commandments that consume slave adjusted. Settlement Talon will now be aware of stealth units, so trying to capture victory points. So no bullshit surrounding that anymore. Fix the bugs, stopping the AI from correctly constructing buildings. The AI will now reliably research technologies that cost money. That was an issue, yes. Fix multiple cases wherein respond the AI factions become inactive. Address the bug where the AI would avoid entering settlement when attacking it. The AI will no longer be reluctant. Okay, a bunch of fixes. Improve the AI use of agents. This is actually pretty important because there's so many cases, so many times, right, where I see the AI having a large number of agents because they get some for free, and they're not using them at all. They're just sitting there on the campaign map. It's like, thank you, Creative Assembly. The AI now uses a new dynamic region hint system as part of its evaluation on when to declare war. This should decrease war declaration by distant factions. So your distant neighbors are not going to march across the map to declare war on you. It was pretty ridiculous as Tyrion to watch Ikiklas or Tosa and the Blood Coven all heading to Ulfuan from their core regions. And by the way, they all got wiped out or significantly destroyed as a result of what they did because they sent their armies. I destroyed them. They had nothing left. Hopefully that changes with this. Legacy nerfs to the Barrow Legion, one controlled by AI from Warhammer 1. Interesting. So Kemmler has been useless since Warhammer 1 because of a nerf they introduced there. Alright. Have been removed as they are no longer necessary thanks to the modding community. And as well as a bunch of changes to various factions. Confederations are now going to be easier to achieve. Elfari and Nakari can see each other from the very start. Added a front-end customization option to enable diplomacy, peace, confederation for endgame scenario factions. I think that's a really good one, but yeah, they still need to do a lot of work with the endgame events. All right, gift to vassal, reduce public order. This is very much welcome. With regards to the public order penalty with Confederation. It just feels like annoying though that we still get punished from confederating with a faction when many factions. Though not all of them. I believe Bretonia gains a benefit when they do confederate, if I'm not mistaken. But I haven't played so much of Bretonia and Immortal Empires to be able to state that with a definite certainty. Because keep in mind, there are benefits to leaving the AI alive and control the territory, because, yeah, you don't get the economy from those elements, but you can let the AI develop it for you and then confederate with them. But confederation now is going to be easier to achieve, rebalance, easier to achieve, lower reliability, rating fixed, as well as some battle changes. So those are the changes in 2.2. The most substantial ones, as far as I'm concerned, are the minor settlement changes, the AI changes, campaign changes. The race changes, I mean, it's sad, but I think Skaven got the best of it. And yeah, that follows the long and storied history of Creative Assembly giving a lot of love to Skaven. But I'm like, I get it. Treach is a joke. He's still a joke, by the way. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But it's like, consider what Queek and Treach got, and what little the dwarves got. Like, because they got Legendary Lord's Reward. The only thing that they've changed really is, like, outside of like a unique starting trait for Forgrim's Engineer, like, and minor change, and well, not minor change, but change to Belagar. It's like the dwarves who desperately need reworks didn't get those. Like, they need reworks even for their lords. Like, look at Forex campaign. It's some genuine misery right now. Even with the grudge changes, don't get me wrong, they do need a lot of love. And it's like, no, let's fix 2 legendary lords. I get it that Queek and Tretch were in a bad spot, but it's like the dwarves, Kislev, the Empire, they're all in a far worse start. And yeah, they gave Karl Franz replenishment in neutral territory, but it's only for his army, not for all armies. Guess what? If you're playing the Empire, you're not going to have just one army. And let's not even get into the discussion about Balthazar Gelt. It's like, oh, we're going to help Karl Franz. No, give us the ability to have replenishment in Electrocount territory to fix the problems that we're getting when we're playing as Karl Franz, or enable diplomacy with the Electrocount. Seriously, enabling diplomacy would be better than the system that we currently have. There's a lot of things that still need to be improved on for a lot of factions. Absolutely. But there are substantial quality of life changes with battles, with the AI, with minor settlements that are very welcome. I might be very critical of what Creative Assembly hasn't done with the races. Kislev still needs a lot of help. The dwarves need a lot of help. The Empire needs a lot of help. But what they've done in the campaign and battles, which was their stated priority, by the way, with this patch, is very welcome. We'll see what 2.3 does, because 2.3 is going to be the last patch of the year, as far as I understand it. Actually, if I just go all the way to the very top over here of this post, past the regiments of renown. Right, so when it comes down to it, yeah. So 2.3 will be the last patch of this year, and then we're gonna get more stuff in 2023. Now, some people are responding, oh, we didn't get Chaos Dwarfs. We weren't gonna get Chaos Dwarfs. There would have been trailers on that. It was reasonable to not expect them, but 2.3 is gonna be the last patch of this year. We still have some time. We'll see when that comes out. Probably early December, if I'm guessing. And I do hope that the Empire and Dwarves and Kislev do get more substantial changes, because they're all in a pretty bad state. And that does contribute to where the campaigns currently go. But I think it's going to be interesting playing some campaigns with AI changes and battle changes, experience changes, etc. It's going to be interesting going forward. So there's some major changes, some major improvements, don't get me wrong in that, but certain races did desperately need some help, and they did not get it. That's where I stand right now. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and I'll see you next time. There's, of course, a bunch of other changes that you can check out. I'll link the patch notes. You can check out all the minor stuff. I focused on the things that I felt mattered the most here.